Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilor Vido.
Present.
Councilor Avellaneda.
Present.
Councilor Recupero. Councilor Garcia.
Present.
Councilor Vega Maldonado.
Present.
Councilor Robinson. Councilor Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilor Lopez.
Here.
Councilor Taylor.
Here.
Councilor Brown.
Here.
And Councilor Zabit.
Present.
All members present.
At this time, I'm going to invite the city manager to please come up to the microphone to provide us with the State of the City address.
Okay, Mr. President, members of the council, distinguished guest, I guess I could start the State of the City by saying that it has been a rough 12 months, but that would be a gross understatement. What we have experienced and endured here since last March has really been unprecedented and tragic. 218 deaths from the pandemic in the city of Chelsea alone. 500,000 deaths from COVID nationwide. It's really hard to fathom. And if all that weren't grievous enough, we witnessed this past year the brutal murder of George Floyd and other innocent Black Americans to police brutality. And we saw our nation's capital stormed and overrun by insurrectionists bent on overturning a democratic election. A year like that could easily leave one completely discouraged. But that's not how I look back on the past year, certainly not from my perspective as the leader of this city. Because in the midst of all that darkness, there was some light. And it was a light clearly visible here in Chelsea. Most apparent from the way the city rallied together to respond to the pandemic. Now, I really don't want to dwell on COVID-19 tonight, but I do think that some review of the work we accomplished together in our relief efforts is warranted, mostly because I truly believe that in this most extraordinary time, the city, the council, and its residents fully met this historic moment. The level of support we provided to renters, to homeowners, to small businesses, to those suffering from food insecurity and job loss was extensive and generous and far, far beyond what any other communities around us or of our size were willing to commit. And in hindsight, some of what we did was truly innovative. The creation from scratch of an isolation hotel for our COVID-positive residents in collaboration with Revere, no other municipality in the Commonwealth did that. The setting up of a legal aid clinic for residents facing eviction. Very few municipalities provide that kind of direct legal assistance to their residents. And the launch of our Chelsea Eats Food debit card program, one of the largest pilots in the nation of direct unfettered money to those in need, that's a program that could become a national model for how you deliver effective safety net relief. Now, I also like to think that we met the moment here in Chelsea when it came to responding to the racial strife that roiled the nation and brought long overdue attention to systemic racism in our society. Of course, in Chelsea, we marched together in solidarity with the members of the Chelsea Black community. But in addition, we did something here that too few do in public service. we actually listened, and we listened carefully to the voices of those most impacted by the scourge, and we crafted policies to try to specifically address their needs. The most visible result of that was the creation of our new Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And our selection committee, led by City Solicitor Cheryl Watson-Fisher, has done an excellent job reviewing candidates and vetting finalists for director, and very soon we'll have an announcement for the director of that groundbreaking position. But the creation of that DEI office wasn't the only structural change we made in 2020, and I'm hopeful that some of these others, they'll also bode well for our operations in 2021 and beyond. As you know, we created a new Housing and Community Development Department to put a renewed focus on these two areas that are really so critical to the city's future prosperity. And under the leadership of Alex Train, that department certainly rose to the COVID challenge, and it has also emerged as an energetic force for positive change in the city. For obvious reasons, we put renewed emphasis here on public health, and this past month welcomed our new public health director, Flor Amaya, who comes to the city with great energy and enthusiasm. That position will play a key role in public health moving forward in the city, including ensuring that our vaccination efforts in our city over the next few months will not only be effective and efficient, but more importantly, fair and equitable. And last year, with a lot of great advocacy work from our Public Works Commissioner, Fidel Maltez, we secured a $600,000 grant from the Bar Foundation to launch the new North Suffolk Resilience and Sustainability Office. That regional office, which will be housed right here in Chelsea City Hall, will help our city tackle some of the most urgent climate crises facing the city. And we expect to have initial announcements on appointments for that office sometime this spring. There were also some other innovative and interesting approaches we took in 2020. Our pilot bike bus lane was launched in the downtown. And honestly, I actually think that has improved the safety and mobility of that corridor for pedestrians and transit riders, who actually make up a large majority of the city's essential workforce. Now, while I recognize this is only a pilot, and the study of its impact and effectiveness is ongoing, I'm really hopeful that the results that we'll gather in the next few months will convince the council that this is an improvement to the downtown that is worth making permanent. In 2020, we also finally executed our contract to join the regional Blue Bike system, another transportation improvement for our city that will increase mobility options for our residents. We should see the installations of those first few Blue Bike stations within the next few weeks. And as the weather breaks, I hope that these Blue Bikes will become a bit ubiquitous around the city. And finally, in 2020, work was completed on new parking lots for the city underneath the toll bin, which was a rare piece of good news from that viaduct project that has caused such inconvenience to our residents over the course of the last 3 years. But as a result, for the first time since I took office, we'll actually add significant new inventory of public parking within at least walking distance of the downtown, something that I hope will help in the post-COVID rebuild of our local business community. One more thing I think is important to point out, and that is that as devastating as COVID was this past year, it did not impede any of our long-term capital plans. Even in the midst of that pandemic, we never lost our momentum on our major infrastructure projects. We secured a critical $5 million MassWorks grant, ensuring the commencement of the Innis apartment redevelopment and all of the surrounding streetscape improvements that go along with that project. We won a $1.5 million grant from the Mass Gaming Commission, thereby allowing full funding of the Beecham Street redevelopment, and that project will commence this spring. And as you know, we started construction on the redevelopment of Upper Broadway, and at the same time advanced the redesign of our reimagining of Lower Broadway. And when those two projects that actually span the entire length of the city are completed later this decade, we'll have transformed the entire spine of the city's public realm. I haven't even mentioned other projects like Garden Cemetery, the City Hall Tower work, and other public improvements that continue to enhance our public spaces. The fact that we have been able to continue these investments without interruption in the midst of very difficult challenges, well, that's a testament to the planning and vision of this city council, which has had the foresight to prioritize long-term quality of life commitments for our residents. Now, just 3 weeks ago, I submitted to you another $14 million in very similar capital project for next fiscal year, an effort to ensure that our progress in this realm does not falter. I'm hopeful that the council will improve this most recent CIP and continue this very wise tradition of investment in the city's future. Now, that's sort of an overview of the good news story as we enter 2021. But the year ahead is by no means without difficulties. In fact, significant challenges confront us as we speak. I mentioned 4 of them at the inauguration of this council a little over a month ago, and some preview of how we might tackle them is probably worth a brief discussion now. And I'll start with housing. It's no secret that the city is facing an enormous amount of housing insecurity. Even before COVID, we had a lack of affordable housing for our residents. But the enormous rental arrearages that now exist as a result of the pandemic have made our housing problems here immeasurably worse. Now, it's not as though we have so far ignored this problem. To the contrary, we all recognized from the start that COVID was going to wreak havoc on our tenant population. And as a result, we really rose to the occasion, creating 2 rounds of rental assistance of $2.5 million, standing up, as I said, the Housing Legal Aid Clinic, and funding additional staffing at both the neighborhood developers and Metro Housing Boston, so that when Chelsea residents go there to apply for state programs like RAF relief, they have dedicated personnel there specifically to help Chelsea residents complete those applications. And we've created an eviction task force, one that meets weekly to address housing emergencies in the city, and because of city council funding, actually has the wherewithal to respond to housing emergencies, at least for the foreseeable future. All of this, again, much more than what most surrounding communities have done for their residents. But we know even this comprehensive support, it isn't enough, and that more than just emergency measures are going to be needed. And 3 things that will happen this year will help. First, we have the package of zoning changes that are currently pending before the council. The essence of that entire zoning effort is to create more density in order to spur additional housing development. Only with greater development can we ever hope to truly fix the housing shortage in the city. And I'm hopeful that the council is going to support at least a majority of those amendments. Second, at the end of 2020, we finally secured legislative approval of our home rule petition that allows the city to transfer at 0 cost tax title parcels to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board for them to develop affordable housing. And I expect that very shortly that board will come to the council seeking its first such transfer in order to develop some new affordable units. And third, and probably most significantly, We actually have 3 developments in the pipeline with affordable housing components that we hope to push over the start line this year. Innis, as I mentioned, the Midas site at 10,005 Broadway, and our own Salvation Army project. Together, these 3 projects will add a significant number of affordable units to our housing inventory. It's approving and constructing these type of projects that's the only way we are going to conquer our local affordable housing crisis. Now, we have a similar difficult challenge awaiting us as we confront the post-COVID rebuild of our struggling small business community. Again, this is not a place where we haven't already tried to help. The $1.1 million relief program from the City Council provided enormous benefit by generating quick and effective grants for these small businesses to meet their expenses during the crisis. That was a real welcome supplement to other state and federal programs that exist out there. But again, this was an effort merely at keeping these businesses afloat. What we need now, as we transition out of this crisis stage, is a much more comprehensive program for revitalizing this business sector once the economy is ready to improve. And to that end, I've directed the Department of Housing and Community Development to spend the next months working closely with the business community and with this council to develop ideas for how we might most effectively jumpstart that sector with some government support. I expect that could include things like assistance for outdoor dining, a second round of the storefront improvement program, perhaps sponsoring some events to drive business to the commercial sector once it is again safe for some larger gatherings. Again, the details and specifics of this business recovery plan are still in development. I just am here to assure you that the city is committed to using government resources to fuel this small business recovery. A third place where we need to focus attention this year is in restoring the city's own financial health. The harsh reality is that as devastating as this pandemic was for our residents, it came at an incredible cost to the city as well. We spent almost $12 million in government funding this past year, fending off the debilitating impacts of this virus. And although some of that came from, and we're grateful for, money from the Federal CARES Act, more than $5 million of that relief came from our own reserves. And that doesn't even include the additional $5 million that we put up to support this year's budget because of revenue shortfalls caused by COVID. As a result of all of this, our overall stabilization reserves, which once exceeded $25 million, now stand at around $15 million. So we do have some work to do to build back our financial strength. I will say, though, that the situation is not quite as bleak as those circumstances might first indicate. In fact, the economic prospects for FY22 are looking better. First of all, the President Biden COVID relief package that's now under consideration by Congress has substantial money in it for state and local governments. And hopefully those provisions for that direct relief will actually pass. The state budget that was submitted by Governor Baker this past month, that's actually predicated on an expectation of economic growth and revenue growth here in the Commonwealth. It actually includes full first-year funding of the Student Opportunity Act, which will significantly benefit our school department. And it even contains some growth, albeit minimal, for state aid to the city. But that's certainly better than the cut to state aid that many people were forecasting just a few months ago. And our own local revenue sources, things like hotel room tax, meals tax, motor vehicle excise tax, building permit fees, though those are still nowhere close to where they were prior to the pandemic, they have not collapsed entirely as we initially feared at the start of the pandemic. Of course, we still have to be cautious, although I firmly believe that the economy will improve over the course of this current calendar year, particularly as vaccines become more prevalent. Exactly how long it will take us to return to our pre-pandemic economic health, well, that's still very much uncertain. Rebuilding over $10 million in reserves will take time and effort, but we will begin that process in fiscal year 22. Finally, the last thing I want to mention is the school system. It will be imperative for the city to help that school system as it emerges from the pandemic. Now, the details of how to proceed, how to transition to in-person learning, how to provision resources to help students adversely impacted by the long layoff, those are all matters that are left exclusively to the purview of the school committee and superintendent. But as a city, we do have an important role to play to partner with and support that effort. And we probably do that best by ensuring that we coordinate closely with the school system for the testing and the vaccinations of school personnel that will be necessary to effectively reopen. It also means advocating strongly to the state for the necessary financial resources to make that possible. Now, the governor's budget, that's a strong start, but even more may be necessary to restore our school system to its previous health. Now, I started tonight by stating the obvious, that this has been a very tough 12 months. Certainly the hardest on me personally in my 30-plus years of government service, and perhaps the most difficult for this own city since the days of receivership. But I will tell you that for the first time in many, many months, I actually feel a sense of optimism. And it's optimism grounded in the belief that despite a still raging pandemic and despite continued economic turmoil, and notwithstanding still unresolved racial injustice, we do seem poised as a city, and I would say as a nation, to turn a corner. Effective vaccines are here, and although distribution has been frustratingly slow, I feel confident this virus is going to be brought to heel in this community of Chelsea within the next few months. The nation appears ready for its racial reckoning, and Chelsea will be prepared with our own Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And our national government actually seems committed to providing the necessary large-scale economic relief that's essential to heal an ailing system. Still, there's a lot of work ahead of us, and very difficult hurdles remain. But as I said to this council in this chamber a few weeks ago, I have every faith and confidence that working together with you, we will find the right path forward in 2021. I'll end with this. Our city was tested and shaken in 2020. To quote one of my favorite biblical phrases, we were hard pressed on every side, but we were not crushed. Instead, we emerged intact, and the state of Chelsea tonight remains steady, strong, and determined. It's our collective task and my duty to ensure that things stay that way in 2021, and I'll do everything in my power to see that that is so. Thanks for listening tonight. God bless the city.
At this time, we'll now move on to our next portion of the meeting and the agenda on memoriams and celebratory resolutions. We have a celebratory resolution in regards to Joe Bevere celebrating his 90th birthday, introduced by City Councilor Leo Robinson. I'll have the clerk read that, please.
Whereas Joe Bevere Sr. was born and raised in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and graduated from Chelsea High School in 1949, and will be celebrating his 90th birthday on March 25th, 2021. And whereas Joe Bevere Sr. excelled in sports, was captain of the baseball team and football team, named MVP his junior and senior year of high school, for his performance in the Chelsea versus Everett Thanksgiving Day football game. And whereas Joe Bevere Sr. was All-American in 1951 while playing football for Drake University, went on to serve his country during the Korean War conflict in between 1952 to 1954. And whereas Joe Bevere Sr. in 1961 married the late K. Francis Cameron, he had 3 children, Jackie, Jolene, and Joe Jr. And whereas Joe's teaching career started at Williams Junior High School, 1961, his Chelsea High School career in 1962, and was the head coach for the outstanding baseball team of 1975, winning the Eastern Massachusetts State Championship. And whereas Joe Bevere Sr. retired in 1990 after 28 years of coaching, and then retired from teaching after 32 years of faithful service. Now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Chelsea, we the members of the Chelsea City Council wish to extend to you, Joseph Bevere Sr., a happy 90th birthday, congratulate you on your dedication to your country, to your students, and your outstanding athletic career.
Councilor Robinson?
I'd ask to adopt this unanimously under suspension. I just have a few brief remarks. Mr. Bevere was my teacher, my coach, a mentor, but most of all, a true friend. I just want to point out one thing that what Mr. Bevere taught us was the principles of hard work, the values of fair play, and teamwork. We used to make the walk from the Williams School to the Y, and sometimes the kids would get out of line. And Mr. Bevere had a certain way how to discipline you, and I know his son would appreciate this. We'd have to do this exercise on your back, on your stomach, on your side. And that's how he would be disciplining you, and you thought it was fun because you were getting off on being able to do it. But I just wanted to wish Coach, a happy 90th birthday and many more to come. He was a great man. He was a good man for the city of Chelsea. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'll just say, just from the chair, growing up here in the city of Chelsea, I got to know Mr. Bevere, also being a coach of not only baseball but also basketball, the CYBL and the Pistons. And there's that great saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and truly, Mr. Bevere is one of the villages. He raised a lot of kids in this community that he had a lot of respect, and I'm sure there are a lot of young men in this city that are now adults, such as Leo Robinson, myself, that appreciated not only again his volunteerism to this community, and he raised not only a great son but also many other young men. So for that, we thank you, and please send us his regards from us to him down in sunny Florida. At this time, we'll take a quick recess so that Councilor Robinson can take a picture down here in the dais. Please, if you would, just come up. Okay, we have another memoriam resolution in regards to the late Chick Corea, introduced by Councilor Leo Robinson. If the clerk would please read that.
Whereas Chick Corea was born on June 12, 1941 in Chelsea, Massachusetts to Anna and Armando J. Corea, and whereas Chick Corea attended Chelsea High School and then went to Columbia University, then transferred to Juilliard School. And whereas Chick Corea became a jazz fusion pioneer, keyboardist, and composer. And whereas Mr. Corea had 2 children, Thaddeus and Leanna, and was then married musician Gail Moran in 1972. And whereas Chick Corea is currently the artist with the most jazz Grammy wins, with 23 wins and 67 nominations, making him in the top 3 of all Grammy winners with the most awards. And whereas on May 20th, 2001, it is known as Chick Corea Tribute Day in the city of Chelsea. Whereas on February 9, 2021, Mr. Corea passed away after recently being diagnosed of a rare cancer. And now therefore be it resolved on behalf of the Chelsea City Council and the residents of Chelsea, we would like to honor the life of one of the most influential musicians of this era. May his legacy keep on inspiring musicians.
Councilor Robinson?
Adopt this unanimously under suspension. If there are no objections.
Seeing none, you have the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to share with you something that Chick left on his Facebook page. As you know, Chick toured the world. He inspired millions. He left these words on his Facebook site before he died. I want to thank all of those along my journey who have helped keep the music fires burning bright. It is my hope that those who have an inkling to play, write, perform, or otherwise, to do so, if not for yourself, then for the rest of us. It's not only that the world needs more artists, but it's also a lot of fun. And to my amazing musicians, friends who have been like a family to me, as long as I have known you, it has been a blessing and an honor, learning from and playing with all of you. My mission has always been to bring the joy of creating anywhere I could, and to have done so with all the artists that I have admired so deeply. This has been the richness of my life. And actually, Chick was a real admirer of the city of Chelsea. And actually, he was writing a song, and he couldn't figure out what to name the song. And people said, why don't you name it Boston? He said, I'm not from Boston, I'm from Chelsea. So he named the song Chelsea. And one of the last concerts that the Chelsea group participated with Chick was at Symphony Hall, and I had invited a friend in who had never seen Chick perform. And it was at Symphony Hall, and she goes, here's a Chelsea guy playing Symphony Hall, and this place is sold out. So just imagine that, how impressed that my friend was to be able to be at this concert. But may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to also say a few words. It was a great day on May 20th, 2001. I was there as a city councilor, and it was an unbelievable day. I didn't really know too much about Chick that day. Well, I knew about him leading up to that day, but I didn't know too much about his Grammys. But I know when he came here, it was a fun-filled day. Down on Everett Ave, we named a honorary road after him, Everett Ave, a sign there. It was so many people there. It was just like a lot of folks there. It seemed like everyone that was there was his family, but I was not. But it was just so many loving faces there, so many kind words were said that day. Chick was smiling. He had his little curly black hair. It was great. After that, later on that day, we went back over to the Williams School, and he played in the music room, where we dedicated the music room to him over there. Then, after the years, I would always see Leo, and Leo would be telling me he had just saw him down at Symphony Hall. I never got a chance to see him down at Symphony Hall, but I always watched him on Facebook, on YouTube. And he was, what was impressive to me was his friend Lenny Nelson, who I really got to meet and spent a lot of time with, and he would always tell me about the great moments. But he was with one of my favorite artists. He was with Miles Davis. He played with Miles Davis for about 2 years. And if you know anything about jazz, he is like the signature piece of jazz. But he also, from reading all the stories on YouTube, the chick career was well up there. And he was just so impressive. 23 Grammys, more than any other person in the jazz music industry. And it was just great to know that a person like that was from Chelsea, and the smiles that he gave when he came back here. I only saw him once here, but when he came back here, he lit the place up. And my condolence is to his family, but he was a well-loved, fruitful man in the music of jazz. Thank you.
Seeing no other speakers, we'll now move on to the next portion of our meeting. We have the public speaking portion. If there's anyone here who would like to address the City Council, please step up to the microphone, state your name and your address. You'll have 4 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening,
Closer.
Good evening, distinguished members of the City Council. I want to thank you for the opportunity. And also the public present and public viewing us. Jorge Vargas, I am from Boston. I live in Charleston, and it's an honor to be this evening with all of you and announcing that I am running for the position of president of SEIU Local 888. SEIU Local 888 plays an important role in many cities and towns, but especially in Chelsea. We've got Chelsea Soldiers Home as many in other positions in this distinguished city. The roles of unions, the role of government and our leaders is very critical. We have noticed, especially during this pandemic, our city manager was very eloquent here, Tom Ambrosio, to speak about the challenges that we face as a city, which we hear in many cities and towns. And it is for that reason that I want to work with all of you, each one of you, and I had the opportunity to meet many of you at a given time. And as a president of Local 888, I aspire as working for our working families. The great work that you do, I want to be able to amplify that work. As president of a union, if I am elected, at the city and state levels. And it is so critical now because today we are finding that our health and safety are at risk at every level. And for example, cities play a critical role. For example, in Holyoke, we had the city council over there sounding the alarm when they were hearing about the different cases taking place. And I know that here you have done so much work. It is incredible. And so more work needs to be done, and we need to do this work together. And I know that I can count on each one of you when that time comes. So I want to thank you for that opportunity, and if elected, I want to seek working with you even closer links and build those bridges together so we can grow a stronger Chelsea. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Richard Flores. I am proudly from Honduras. I am a senior at Chelsea High School, and I will be attending college this upcoming fall. I've been very proud to live in Chelsea for the past 8 years, and taking down statues has become an important topic of conversation throughout the U.S. in the last few years. In Chelsea, the one statue that has been discussed as being taken down is the Christopher Columbus one. This is primarily because Columbus is seen as a person who steals and ridicules the Native American Latinx culture. He represents for many people racism and genocide. The request for a takedown of the statue was formally brought to the City Council this past June 2020. I'm not sure as to why this topic has not been discussed and voted on by the City Council. I've talked to many students and family around my neighborhood about the statue, and not one of them stood completely on the side of keeping the statue. I've spoken to a few of my friends who took AP US history since they're more of experts on history than myself. And one of my friends, Menegai Bujiriri, made the analogy of the Columbus statue to having a Hitler statue in a Jewish temple. Another example is my Italian friend, Victoria Studo, mentioned how she didn't want Italian history to be remembered this way. The city of Chelsea prides itself on diversity. We have seen positive steps from the school board to change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. We also have an equity officer for Chelsea Public Schools to make sure all of our voices are being heard in our schools. But yet, the city has done nothing at this point about this offensive statue. In the past years, we have seen the Columbus statue in the North End get vandalized and eventually decapitated, resulting in the later removal of the statue. And it seems astonishing that it requires vandalism for our voices to be heard about the wrongful glorification of a man, and I hope that this is not the only way to achieve change. It is not right to glorify the man that humiliated and ridiculed our culture, not in Chelsea, which is populated with such a diversity of cultures and people. We do not want to continue being part of a history that supports racism and genocide. This is why I'm here tonight, to ask you to vote on the removal of Christopher Columbus statue, as it does not represent the history that Chelsea should want to be remembered by. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brand Ray Garcia, and I am currently a CHS senior and also current secretary of the Chelsea Youth Commission. Tonight I've come here to speak on behalf of the Chelsea Youth Commission. I'm essentially functioning as the only board within Chelsea City Hall to be driven and operated by all Chelsea youth. The Chelsea Youth Commission has always had their best interest in providing a safe and enriching experience to all Chelsea youth. We are the youth voice within Chelsea that speaks up and guides other boards when necessary. Therefore, it is in our current best interest to push for the removal of the Columbus statue on 171 Winnie Smith Street. Residing in a majority non-white Latino community, such as Chelsea, it is important that everything we do enhances our effect on the community as a whole, ensuring all our actions reflect the community. As a result, because of this, we urge for the removal of the statue, as this monument does not represent and properly reflect our community. Christopher Columbus, most widely known as the founder of the New World, was and will never be nothing more than a cruel colonizer who made it his mission to take over the lands of the many indigenous peoples within the Americas. To some in Chelsea, these indigenous peoples of the Americas were our ancestors, both massacred physically and culturally. Therefore, by upholding and keeping this statue of Christopher Columbus, we are representing nothing but a symbol of white supremacy, which is an issue that has plagued every POC community today and a prevalent problem in the US, which we have all seen. Chelsea residents should not have to view a symbol of colonization in their city, nonetheless their neighborhood. Even relocation of the statue is not and will never be enough. It is not enough to simply acknowledge the wrongdoings of past historical figures. We must pass to start condemning the actions of historical figures, which includes all forms of veneration and celebration of said figures, such as statues. No child, parent, or person of color deserves to see a symbol of white supremacy, a symbol of genocide, and a symbol of their scarred ancestry in the city that claims to care for and love all. Not to mention, the establishment of this statue is directly anti-Indigenous, especially as Chelsea's land was originally owned by the Pawtucket and Massachusetts tribe. This is directly anti-Indigenous as a whole. By also keeping the statue, we're disrespecting them in the very land they cared for. This is not okay. This is not simply a matter of removing a statue. This is a matter as you guys as a council, if you condemn or do not condemn white supremacy. It's much more than a statue. We trust that you will make the right decision and listen to people of the Chelsea. Sincerely, the Chelsea Youth Commission. Thank you.
Seeing no further speakers, we'll now move on to the next portion of our meeting. Before we do so, I just wanted to recognize that we do have from our school committee as a delegate to the City Council, Rosemary Carlisle. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of the meetings. Do I have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of February 8th?
I make a motion to approve the regular meetings of February 8th, 2021. If there are no objections.
Councilor Garcia asked for a motion to adopt the accept under suspension. Seeing no objection, we'll now move on to communications from the city manager. We have a communication received from the city manager in regards to DBW issues.
Dear councilors, I am writing in response to recent city council orders requesting repair work from the Department of Public Works. One order requested repair of the intersection of Highland and Marginal Streets. The other requested repair of the concrete handicap ramp for City Hall on Washington Avenue. With respect to Highland and Marginal, that area has been impacted by the ongoing Eversource work. Eversource has a contractual obligation to repave the entire stretch of Marginal Street it has impacted curb line to curb line. That work will take place during this upcoming construction season. In the meantime, before the comprehensive fix orders, the DPW will do some temporary patchwork at Highland intersection as soon as the weather allows. As for the handicap ramp for City Hall, that ramp requires comprehensive concrete reconstruction. The city will schedule this repair work likely by the third-party concrete contractor during the upcoming construction season. The funds will be available in the existing DPW street and sidewalk budget.
Councilor Recupero asked to accept the communication under suspension. Would you like to speak on it?
I understand what the city manager is writing to us, but for too long of a period, these utilities companies come into our city, break up the stuff, and then they don't put it the way it's supposed to be. This one, it says they already made an arrangement with them that they're gonna do Marginal Street. How about all the other streets that they do? Are they gonna put them back to the way the taxpayers spend their money to fix the roads? We need to enforce more rules or more, make them pay fines for them to go back and fix the roads. From what I read once before, it says roads cannot be broken up after 5 years they've been done. I can tell you on Park Street, the roads weren't done 5 years ago, and yet there's holes all over the place. There's holes there that look like all the money the poor taxpayers spend to fix their roads, and then their roads look like crap all over again. They look like junk, but we don't make them do all these things. Do we have, I know that we have someone that goes to them. This DPW does have someone that makes them do this, but do we really make them do it? What do we impose? Do we have fines on them? What do they do? What makes them want to fix our roads the way that they were before they got there? Nothing. I've never seen it. I don't know if any other councilors has ever seen the roads go back the way they were. I've never seen it, and I've lived here 42 years. I see them break them up, then they put holes, and then the holes become sinkholes, and then DPW's got to fix them. Why don't we make them fix them? That's what we're supposed to do. And as far as the one down here, I can understand on the ramp, the handicap ramp, you say we're going to wait until it's time. But they could have put some time on it now, so some person that wants to go in a wheelchair doesn't have to go over the ramp. You know, it doesn't have to get caught on it. I can understand all that. It's fine. I agree with what you said that the city manager said to us. You said to us yourself that they're going to repair the whole road.
30
fine.
seconds, Councilor.
Are they going to fix every other road the same way or not? That's it.
Next communication from the city manager regards to approval to pay prior year expenses. Councilor Robinson.
Accept and file a communication. Something will be coming up under new business. There are no objections.
I'd like to speak on it. Can I say something on it?
You may.
Okay. This is not a lot of money that we are proven to give. This is the prior year expense. But there's one thing I can't understand. They fall $1,000, $500. We have big budgets for these expenses, and they're always going above their budgets. We don't say that to the taxpayers. When they don't pay, you go and you impose penalties on them. So if the budgets, I can understand here, cap and gowns, $1,705, whatever it is, we already allocated that to the budget. But every time, they don't pay $50 here, $100 here. Why can't they just pay all of it? Why do we always have to pay the extra? Do they always don't know how to do their own figures? I can't figure that out. It's not a lot of money, but I mean, it's still money.
We have the next item in the communications to City Manager Tom Ambrosino in regards to the notice of residency waivers.
Dear councilors, I am writing to notify you of my intention to grant residency waivers to two current DPW employees, Francisco Lamas and Chris Pezos. Both of these employees are Chelsea residents who recently purchased homes outside of the city, one in New Hampshire and one in Haverhill, due to the difficulty of finding affordable homes in Chelsea. Both are valued members of the DPW whom the Public Works Commissioner wishes to retain. In accordance with Administrative Code Part 4, Section 11202, I requested you provide me with any comments on these proposed waivers within 7 days.
Councilor Robinson.
I would actually accept and follow this communication. Personally, I'm a little disappointed that we have two employees that came to work for the city in 2017 and chose to purchase homes outside of the city. There are affordable opportunities and a chance to be able to buy condos here within the city, and their incomes would fit into the affordable category. I understand that, they have a right to purchase, homes outside of the city, but I think it's very important that we try to keep employees here in the city. So, thank you.
Councilor Recupero.
There's nothing us councilors can do about this. Even if we wanted to, we didn't want to. I think the worst thing we can do is, it's okay if you want to waive someone live within our state, but to go out of our state, that's kind of crazy, that we allow them to leave our state. Even if we said no, we couldn't do anything because that's not what's there. So the city needs to have some type of remedy on the next contract or whenever it is to take care of this situation. You can't let people work here, take our money and take it, not even within our state, take it out of our state. It's not the right thing to do. We don't want to set up precedents to anybody that says, okay, you want to leave this state, fine, you can go. But about the poor people that want to stay here, they want to work here, they don't matter? They matter too. I don't believe myself, this is my own opinion, that people should leave our state. I don't think they'll allow it in any other place, but I know that they're allowing it here because of unions. Whatever the unions deal. So next time we have a union contract, this should be a priority for the city to stress, to make sure that even if you get a waiver and go around but live within the state, don't leave the state. It's the wrong thing. You send the wrong message when you allow someone to work here and leave our state. That's wrong. It's okay if you want to get a waiver to go from here to Lynn, to Lowell, to Lawrence, but leaving our state altogether is the wrong message, and this should have been taken care of before. And I hope the next contract will be taken care of because it's an important thing for people to know that you're going to work in my state, you're going to live in my state. Don't leave my state and take your money somewhere else. That's not how it's supposed to be. Thank you.
I see Councilor Enio Lopez and then Councilor Avellaneda. Councilor Enio Lopez?
Yes, I'm going to follow up what he said. I'm a little disappointed, too, that someone who works in the city of Chelsea is moving out to New Hampshire. That means we can't hire anybody in Chelsea to do this kind of job. We need people here. What happens if there's an emergency? This person is going to come all the way from New Hampshire to do the job here? I'm a little disappointed about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Avellaneda.
Vice President. I share the frustration with my colleagues about, when we receive these announcements and notifications from the city manager that our employees are moving out and to find affordable housing elsewhere. And I get it. I mean, I'm in the business, so I know exactly what's going on and where they're going to buy. I understand what the values are here, and I understand what the values are in Haverhill and New Hampshire, so I'm not surprised. But my position is based on being able to connect all the dots, not just what's going on with this letter, but what I have said here numerous times and how it's received. I have advocated vehemently that this community, our city, does not do enough to create home ownership opportunities, affordable home ownership opportunities for our residents here, to transition from being a renter who works here, earns enough money to want to stay here but can't. And come with that, financial stability. And the benefits, I can get into it in so many ways, how much it is better to own than to rent. Obviously, that is the American dream. That is a path to financial stability. And I hear over and over, that we have this housing crisis. And tonight, the city manager talks about how we have some projects in the pipeline, to help address that affordability issue. But what you have to realize is those 3 projects that he mentioned are all rentals. They're not home ownership. They're rentals. So, you know what? I say to that, big to do. I mean, project by project, we need to do more. And I've talked to you time and time again, connect the dots. When I talk about how unstable having an 80% of your housing stock to be rental is no good on your tax base, because I've come up here and I've explained that our rental assessments are absolutely low, and that the burden of the taxes of this community are unfairly on the very low 20% of the homeowners, the actual homeowners. So we are actually making it even harder to own a home in this community, making it more expensive. You want to push affordable rentals, but I'm telling you that for every rental you build, you need to build 8 market rate rentals to offset that cost. That's just the numbers, folks. And if you don't do that, then you're going to ask the owner side, the market rate, or the regular Joe, to subsidize that affordable housing rental. And it's not. It's a downward spiral. Those are numbers. That's what I'm preaching here. Don't look at me and say, "Oh, Roy wants home ownership because he's real estate." No, I'm here to build a community. I want my community to be stable. I don't want them leaving here. I don't want the working class that made this place to get booted out and can't find a place to live and has to go to Haverhill, New Hampshire, and whatever, and take those dollars with them. I don't want that. I don't want a transient community that doesn't show up to meetings, doesn't vote. No. And I surely don't want to, again, punish the homeowner. And I also don't want to punish the small business owner who, again, is also subsidizing this affordableness. It doesn't make any sense. We are at 20% affordable in this community. If you take the number of affordable units versus market rate, it's 20%. It's the highest in the state. The state says, do 10%. We ask 15%. We're aggressive. But what they're not telling you, and you're not looking at the data, is that we're actually at 20% of our housing stock. And they're telling us, oh, by the way, we don't have enough. Do you understand what that 20% is doing to the homeowner? It's not good. It isn't. And look, I'm an advocate for affordable housing. I came up here. I pushed for inclusionary zoning. I came up here and I pushed for the CPA. By the way, the CPA had to be approved by the voters. If we were going to increase the tax, we had to get their approval. We couldn't increase their taxes without it. This continually creating more affordable rentals and getting it subsidized by the homeowners is an illegal tax in my view, because the voters never got to say, yes, we want to keep on going higher. And sure, just put it on my back. Yeah, let those affordable units keep on coming. I'll pay for it. We didn't get to say that to them. They didn't get to vote.
It's an illegal tax. That's what's going on. And I would be fine with it. I would be fine with it if we had 20%, 25% affordable rates, if, for one thing, the CPA, when you adopt it, the higher the rate you want to charge, if you go from 1% to 2% to 3%, the state gives you more money the higher you go. If you adopt 1%, you only get one round of funding. If you go to 2%, you get to the second round. If you tax 3%, you get to go to the third round. So the higher CPA tax you put in, the state will give you more money. We do not get that more money for being higher than the 10% from the governor. If you told me that the governor is going to increase communities who have high affordable rates than everybody else, like Wellesley has 5 or whatever, if you want to compare us, if they told us, you know what, if you were above 10%, we're going to throw an extra $1 million in local tax aid. Oh, you're at 20%? You know what? You're going to get an extra $3 million more in local tax aid because you are subsidizing your housing base and you don't want to tax them. We don't get that. That's the fight you should be having at the State House to make us, if the communities like Chelsea are going to bear the burden of having 20%, 25% affordable housing and not be able to charge them the same rate as the market rate, then we should be saying to the state, bail us out, baby. Give me that money. Because I can't go, to the regular homeowner to bail us out. It's unfair. You're squeezing them. You can't. The numbers make sense. You have to understand and take a big picture, holistic view of what this means. I want to be able to say up here, I want to help as much as I can, that this community would want to help as much as it can. But it has to make dollars and cents. So there you go. Either you say, enough is enough. Let's focus on home ownership, because we're only at 20% of our homes in this community are home-owned. Or you tell me that, hey, don't worry, the cavalry's coming, the state's going to bail all you guys out. Because otherwise, these letters continue. This whole thing of having time after time of people leaving here to buy a home somewhere else is continuing. And that's my concentration. That's what I'm focused on. Building a community. You want to tell me what Chelsea was? I'll tell you what Chelsea was. Chelsea was, prior to the 73 fire, all 3 families. And they were owner-owned. And they gave the best rates on rentals. No one gave a better rate on a rental than the guy who lived on the first floor and rented the top 2 floors above him. Nobody. That's the Chelsea I know. That's the Chelsea that this was. Not nonprofits buying up everything, building everything so that they can subsidize their staff. That's not the way to go, folks, because I guarantee you that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't. We have 3 nonprofits right now trying to get into the real estate game. 3 of them. Because they know that in order to fund their programs, they should be owning properties and charging rents. And don't worry, the assessors is going to help them out. That's what's going on. And I get frustrated because it's all connected to this. We need to own homes for our people.
1 more minute, Counselor.
I'm done.
Thank you, Counselor Avellaneda. I see more hands. I see Counselor Todd Taylor.
Sorry. Well, it's hard to follow that, but I generally agree with just about everything he said. And we desperately need to balance our society here to make it economically viable. And the way that we do that, and the people who buy into the system when they own, and they're not in and out, in and out, in and out. And we want stable families. We want, not that renters aren't, but when I say stable, I mean that they're going to stay put in Chelsea. And I think that we need to concentrate on affordable housing for home ownership. And Roy is right. President of Asianada, sorry. We need to have this argument up at the State House. And just because this is the way things have always been done doesn't make it right. And, you know, there's a lot of people who run around talking about how they're for the people, but really giving the people the American dream of home ownership is really the way the government should be trying to help people. We need to try to encourage upward mobility and success in our community. And I think that this constant push for more and more and more affordable housing rentals is a boondoggle. I really do. I don't think it's wise economic policy, and I would hope that you know, a lot of you who want to see people rise from their own station, you know, this is a good way to do it. This is a way to make people's lives significantly better. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Councilor Vidot.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. So I think that everybody that has spoken raises very valid points. But you know, initially the conversation was a waiver for 2 DPW workers who had to move outside of the city because they can't afford to buy a home here. And so we got into this big, huge philosophical debate about affordable housing, and I agree. We do have a lot of affordable housing in the city. But again, it's the same system that allows for us to have 3 different food pantries happening in the city, and us needing to have debit cards for people to be able to get food, and us starting our own rental assistance program. At the end of the day, we have been neglected by the federal government, by the state, and we have to fend for ourselves. As much as I'd like to say, yes, I want everyone in Chelsea to be able to rise up and have a part of this American dream and buy a home, I recognize that that's also a very privileged standpoint on my part, because the average person is struggling just to make ends meet. And so when you don't have other cities or municipalities that are willing to raise their 5-10% of affordable housing in their own city, the burden continues to fall back on us. And what are we supposed to do when our median income for Chelsea is less than half of what the federal government says it should be? What are we supposed to do when we have a bunch of people that are coming to City Hall and to different nonprofits and saying I'm homeless? At the end of the day, like, how do you turn those folks away? So we are being, you know, bombarded with extreme need and very, very limited resources. And I don't think that anybody's wrong, or this isn't even, unfortunately, it's not about even being right or wrong. It just is what it is, and we're in a bad predicament. But the last thing I want to do is make 2 DPW workers feel that they've done something wrong for trying to better their lives, and to think that they should stay in Chelsea and be confined to a small, dinky little 2-bedroom condo when I have a little backyard. Like, I want to live the American dream too. Why should I deprive them of that and what they want to offer their family? So I just think that, yes, when we think about it from a macro standpoint, yes, all of these things are true. But at the end of the day, we're talking about real humans that are really homeless, that have families, that are struggling to make ends meet. And so what do we do with that? And so I welcome this conversation, because it's one that we need to have when we're thinking about the long-standing viability of this community and all of the issues that we have. But everything needs to be taken into consideration, because everyone's just trying to make ends meet. And what we're going to see is more of this happening. If an affordable housing project comes before me today, I have no choice but to support, knowing that there are people that are at risk of losing their apartments. But then who's putting responsibility or putting pressure on the other communities? So again, we really, like Councilor Regenera says, we need to fight at the State House. We need to really speak up. The federal and the state government have left us out to dry, and we're doing the best we can. So I just wanted to make sure that to kind of put that into perspective. And yes, everyone is right. Both truths are possible, and we have to hold that duality in order to legislate effectively.
Thank you, Councilor Vidal. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Okay. Now we move on to our next item, communications and petitions to the council. We have a communication received from Chelsea Black community during Cromwell in regards to honoring the Chelsea City Council as Trailblazers. I can go ahead and read this. Go ahead.
Congratulations, Chelsea Black community has selected the Chelsea City Council as an honoree of the Chelsea Trailblazer recognition. You, the gatekeepers of our city, have diligently worked together to establish resources that are essential to the survival of our community. Your leadership response to the COVID-19 pandemic and racial injustice is commendable. Your advocacy at local, state, and federal levels have helped to improve the quality of life for your constituents and the whole community. Now that you are respected for your service, the Chelsea Trailblazer recognition is a note taken by our organization of your earnest effort for the betterment of Chelsea. You will be honored at the Black History Month celebration on Wednesday, February 24, 2021. The celebration will be a virtual Zoom event from 6 to 8 p.m. Please invite members of your family and friends as well. A member of the Chelsea, the CBC will be contacting you with more information on the Chelsea Trailblazer recognition. You may also contact me at 781-475-3817 if you have any questions. Once again, wholehearted, well-deserved congratulations to the Chelsea City Council.
What is the wish of the council? Councilor Leo Robinson asks for a roll call vote.
Councilor Vido?
I'm not sure what I'm voting on.
We're voting on the adoption of we're voting on the communication received by John Cromwell, and it is regarding the award.
I don't understand the significance of a vote on an outside communication.
Why?
What? Can you just clarify what I'm voting on?
You are voting on a communication received. Councilor Robinson, do you care to explain why you're making this a roll call as opposed to adopt unanimously under suspension?
Well, I think the whole board should vote on it, not just accept it and file.
Okay. So the explanation here is to vote on the communication received, so you can accept the future invitation to an award that every council member here is to receive. A yes vote based on this request, a yes vote is you accept this communication, a no vote is you do not. Does that clarify? Great. So we move on to vote.
Councilor Vido?
Yes.
Councilor Avellaneda?
Yes.
Councilor Recupero? Yes. Councilor Garcia?
Yes.
Councilor Vega Maldonado?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilor Lopez?
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Yes.
And Councilor Zabit?
Yes.
All in favor? 11 votes. All members are in favor.
We move on to the next item of the next communication we have in front of us is a communication received from City Solicitor Cheryl Watson-Fishin in regards to legal memorandum on zoning changes. Clerk?
Move to waive the reading and to accept and file and send the communication to the conference that we will be holding on March 1st on the zoning amendments.
Okay, Councilor Avellaneda moves to waive the reading and under suspension, and you will all be receiving the invitation to our March 1st subcommittee meeting regarding this. Now we move on to the next item in our agenda. It's the communication received from Miss Ilana Asher and her students in regards to removing Christopher Columbus statue in Chelsea. Clerk, do you want to read or do you need help? Do you want me to read it? You got it? Okay. As you know, people have demonstrated against systemic racism in the midst of a global pandemic. Throughout the nation, places are taking down statues that symbol this racism, like Richmond, Virginia, which was known as Confederate Row, has taken down their statues along with many other southern cities taken down by Confederate heroes. Along with that, for over 20 years, places have recognized the damage that honoring Columbus had on its citizens. Over 10 states do not celebrate Columbus Day, and I was very happy to hear the school board last year followed in its footsteps. But I wonder why the Columbus statue still stands in this city as what it must represent to so many of the people who live and love Chelsea. Many cities have realized that it is not enough to make sure schools teach anti-racism curriculums. Places like New Haven, Connecticut decided to not just get rid of the holiday, but their statue. And even the North End in the last year have taken down their Columbus statues. I was very excited to recently see on change.org that people in Chelsea want it taken down, and over 800 people have signed the petition, including some former Chelsea High students. Do we have to wait until the statue is vandalized to get the city council to act and take down the Columbus statue? I say this because that is what happened in the North End to get that statue taken down. I forgot to tell you, I teach American history at Chelsea High School. I love our country, the Constitution, our founding fathers and mothers. And if you have been in my class, Ben Franklin, I also make sure to share the stories of others that have not always been heard of so loud, like Sojourner Truth, Hiram Revels, Lucy Stone, Ida Barnett, etc. My students know that the plaque that is on the Columbus statue is wrong when it says discoverer of America. How does he discover a place that was already inhabited by Native Americans? Why do we honor him in Chelsea when he never even set foot onto the United States? Our schools have recognized that telling the story from the white European perspective is not correct. We need to stop glorifying people and putting them on a pedestal or on a horse, especially these people that in our past, like Columbus, we called heroes, and yet he committed crimes against humanity. I know some cities have voiced concerns that we're hurting the Italian community by taking him down. There is a better way to honor Italians than with Columbus, and let us look at ways to honor all immigrant groups in Chelsea. I ask the city council and city manager not to continue to allow history be shown that it is full of non-tolerance, slavery, and genocide to continue to stand in sanctuary city like Chelsea. I know the statue was paid for by Polish immigrants in the 1930s, who in that decade saw this man be given a holiday. They wanted to show their love for their country and thought by having a statue of him that they would be showing this. In the year 2021, we know that this is not the way. Just like our federal government is supporting having the Treasury change the face of the $20 bill to show Harriet Tubman on the front instead of President Andrew Jackson, for many people represents a man who committed genocide to the Native Americans in the 1820s. Christopher Columbus committed vast atrocities and crimes against humanity during his lifetime, and images of him have no place in a community as rich and diverse as Chelsea. The other irony with this address is that this was the original name of the city of Chelsea, honoring this Indian nation, the Winnisimmett. We ask those in power in the community of Chelsea to take down a statue of Christopher Columbus located at 171 Winnisimmett Street, Chelsea, Massachusetts. Best, Ilana Asher, Chelsea history teacher, Chelsea High School. Home address, 10 Museum Way, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And this was a letter submitted by her along with Chelsea High School students. What is the wish of the council? Okay, I have Councilor Avellaneda moving to accept and file under suspension. Does anybody wish, Councilor, do you wish to speak on it? Do you wish, Councilor Recupero?
I can see they all say get rid of this, get rid of that, but that ain't gonna make no difference. Her history's already been written. If you wanted to get rid of something, this lady here says she's a professor, whatever, teacher of history. So let's change the name of Chelsea to Winnisimmett. That's what it was originally called, so we might as well change it. And then there's something else that's kind of interesting. You want to get rid of your past so bad, but to know your future, you have to know your past. So if you wanted to make it even, you say, put a statue of Native American right next to it. What's wrong with that? That way you can see two sides of it. You say this person was such a bad person. He didn't discover America. Well, the word discovery means when you find something and you show somebody else where it is. That's what discovery means, to me anyways. I don't know if he discovered or whatever he did. If it wasn't for him, well, I bet as he was, no Hispanic would be here. No name Hispanic would be here. None of the Hispanic people. And why is it that this is the only holiday that you want to get rid of a statue or anything? Why don't you get rid of Thanksgiving? What's wrong with that? The Pilgrims killed many, many Indians. Thousands of them. Destroyed them. But I never heard a movement to say, let's go to Pilgrim Rock and get rid of the statue that they have of the Pilgrims. Why not? So what is this, a two-sided thing? I'm not speaking because my children are Hispanics. And back then, Columbus, not because of him, whatever he did. I'm talking about history. Why do you want to erase the history? Embrace your history and learn from it. Then you might as well get rid of everything you ever stood for. Everything that you learned, change it, get rid of it. Each civilization of people has always conquered other people, and they kill to conquer. That's the way of the world. It's bad to say that that's what it is, but that's what human beings do. So we learn from it. It's the same thing today. You see it today. Countries go and conquer other countries. What do they do? So what are you going to do? Say it didn't happen? If it happened, you leave it. And then something else that's interesting too. That statue's been there all these years. It's covered. I never even knew it existed. Do 90% of the people of Chelsea know it existed? Did they put it in the middle of Chelsea with nothing on it? There's 5 trees around it. And it was dedicated by immigrants, Spanish, Italian, Polish, whatever it was. Now, if you're going to put a new statue, who's going to maintain the statue? The city itself? Is the taxpayer supposed to pay for this statue? Nobody paid for that statue. All the years I've been here, I never even seen them spend a dime on that statue. So if we're going to get rid of it, it's okay. If that's what the majority wants, it's going to happen. But that ain't going to change anything. It's not going to change history. It's not going to change the view. This is just something to say, let's get rid of it because it was wrong. So get rid of life altogether. What life is just? Nobody's ever had no wrong done to them. Everybody's perfect. Nobody's perfect in this world. Don't get rid of your past. Embrace your past and make it that the generation can understand. And don't repeat the mistake of the past. If you get rid of your past, you'll never know your future.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? I see Councillor Vidal.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I just want to, you all can hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you kindly. I just want to make sure that I touched up, and Councillor Recupero and I have had this conversation back and forth. I often just let him talk because I understand that there's some, there's history there and you know, I sometimes feel that for the Italian community, I almost feel like maybe we can try to find a better character to represent. I hate the fact that this is what we associate with the Italian culture because I know so many folks, I have so many friends that are Italian, and I just know that we can do better. I just want to be clear that removing the statue doesn't change history. It's just that we're not glorifying the sins of our past. And so when I think about my culture and how I got here, I think about the indigenous folks that lived here originally. I think about the African slaves that were brought here beyond our control. And so while, you know, I understand that some folks think that, that Hispanics came here through only one channel, we have to explore everyone's culture. And in the conversations that I've been having in the community with Latinos and Latinx folks across the city, the fact of the matter is that I don't know anybody that associates Columbus with a rich part of their history. And so I just want to make sure that what we're doing here is just, we're not trying to change our history. We're trying to learn from it and make sure that what we depict on our public grounds, on our government property, in public spaces, is something that promotes inclusivity, that promotes life, that promotes health, and obviously is not glorifying a man who committed genocide on this, in the lands that he conquered. And I believe that the counselor from District 6 has a skewed version of what discover means. But nonetheless, I hope that when this matter comes before us, I will be voting to make sure that we take the statute down. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other comments on this communication? Great. So now we move to unfinished business. Do we have anything under unfinished business? I see a motion by Counselor Avellaneda. Counselor Avellaneda, what is your motion?
I'd like to take out of committee the order that the statue of Christopher Columbus be removed from Chelsea Square, and that the Historical Commission and the Chelsea Arts and Cultural Commission place on their agendas to collaborate and discuss replacing of said statue with a memorial of the original indigenous inhabitants of Chelsea to remember their place in Chelsea history. And I ask for a roll call vote.
So the motion in front of us is we're pulling this item from the agenda. It is properly before us, and it is properly before us as a roll call vote. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on it? Counselor Avellaneda.
Thank you. Vice President Garcia. I had put this place last year. And of course, there were many other things that came in front of the agenda of the City Council, so you have to understand that the reason why this kind of laid in committee, and we did have a committee meeting on this conference with members of the Cultural Council, and we had a member of the Knights of Columbus, who had already talked about them taking the statue once and if the city removed it. So with again, it was just the priorities of what was going on in the list of things, but it was not forgotten, and I'm looking forward to voting in favor of removing this item. You can talk a lot about cancel culture and all that, but I think the reality is that for me, at least me personally, I never really understood why this particular statue was in Chelsea Square. If you look at the history of our city, this region, it really had nothing to do with the statue. This was basically the essence of why these statues started to pop up. More than anything else is because there was a sense of persecution felt by the Italian communities across this country at the time. And in order to fight against that feeling that they would pop up a symbol of Christopher Columbus as a favorable view of the Italian society and the contributions that Italian Americans made to this country. And now we come forward and, again, knowing what we know, as we stop hiding or unearthing and bringing forth some of the nastiness history that we have in our country with the treatment of Indians, the colonization, slavery and all that, the ugly truth of the country I love, because, they tried to smooth over all the rough stuff, so to speak, and that's but they don't call that cancel society, cancel culture, right? So when you hide all the brutality and the other things that were going on in this country, in the colonization and the conquering and go west, young man, and all that part somehow got, hidden. But that's not cancel culture. No, this is cancel culture. When you come back to it and you say, wait a minute, upon further review, I'm throwing a flag, let's review this, and is this really the true story? Is this what we want to, prop up and say that this is what we should be celebrating? And as far as my colleagues, talking about whether or not we should be celebrating Thanksgiving and whatnot, yes, there is actually a movement going on. I'm not sure he's not paying attention to it, that they want to rename Thanksgiving, and it's happening. It's called Indigenous Day. So yes, it is happening, because we have to realize of the history of what was going on here, and that will come out by the new residents of this community who are not we're not shaming anyone, but we're saying, wait a minute, we got to be a little bit more honest about what you were trying to sell me in the 5th grade, okay? Let's be honest. And maybe I don't approve of the messaging you gave me, okay? I don't want to see the Disney version. I want to see the R-rated version of what really happened. Thank you. So with that being said, I think there's a place for that location to have Samuel Maverick, founder of this city. We're about to enter the celebration of the 300th, right? We're at 2024? 300th year. We're going to come up to the 300th year of the founding of this city. And yet, we don't got anything for Samuel Maverick. We obviously don't have anything for the local inhabitants that were here at the time either. Why not explore that history? We have our own. Why do we have to borrow about something that happened, 1,200 miles away and really didn't have anything to do with us? That's all. So I don't want to get into the whole fight about what it was and what we think, but I think we can definitely do something better, more local, by taking that statue down and starting fresh. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor wish to speak on the matter? I see Councillor Melinda Vega Maldonado.
Hi. I just want to mention that you may hear my son in the background. He's crying. I am trying to have him maintained right now, so just FYI, okay? But I prepared a speech with regards to this matter. As a Latina and woman of color and a lifelong resident of Chelsea, where the majority of our residents are immigrants, I too am 100% in agreement with the removal of the statue of Christopher Columbus in Chelsea Square. We are a country that now represents the complete opposite of what he and those explorers who followed him believed in. His statue represents slavery, colonialism, mass brutality, rape, and the theft of indigenous lands. We need to stop glorifying someone who held racist, white supremacist views and was responsible for the start of the genocide and exploitation of Native peoples in the Americas. The removal of his statue in our city should no longer be delayed, which is why I urge my colleagues to
We need to stop the side comments.
of
I
this
apologize,
statue.
Melinda, but we need to, so the councillors who are present, stop the side comments. You were given a moment to speak. Let other councillors speak. Melinda, Councillor Melinda, may you speak louder, please? Thank you. She will continue, but no more comments because it disrupts. She will speak louder, but no more comments because other councillors cannot hear. I can hear you clearly, Councillor. Melinda Vega Maldonado, please continue.
I finished. Would you like me to start again?
We heard you. Thank you. I also see Councillor Todd Taylor. You have the floor, Councillor.
Thank you. Look, I understand the people who want to take Columbus down, but I also want to kind of make one thing clear, and that everyone seems to think that the issue of Columbus is, settled social science, okay? Being, I think, the only trained historian on this council, I can tell you I studied the Columbus Scholarship when I was in graduate school. And now, that's a long time ago, in the 90s. But it was back then that there was this revisionist history by Marxist historians to change the narrative about Columbus. And what happened is there was a guy who wanted to replace Columbus. And he was successful in that when he wrote to the King and Queen of Spain and said, he's doing all these terrible things. So the revisionists, the original scholarship was that he was that these things weren't necessarily true, that scholars were skeptical about this. Now, in my day, when I was studying for my PhD, we there was a debate about this. Now, I don't know what happened. We only have people's writings. But this is far from a foregone conclusion about, and plus, people throw around stuff about, equating him to Hitler and genocide and all this. The thing is that coming from an academic point of view, you can't use words like genocide. It means something different. So, for instance, I don't want to wax, on about this, and I understand where people are coming from. And in the end, we are a community and we're majority rules. So if people want to take it down, great. I think that the power of America is in open discussion and debate. And if we start trying to just erase all of our history, and look, this is what happens in academic circles. I know. People start to tell a different story. And when you control the discourse, you control. And this is what all this is about. This is to make people feel better about things. And I understand that. It's not, I don't hold that against anybody for wanting to take it down. But at the same time, we have to realize that the narrative being put forward is a certain point of view. And that view is not held by all academics. So, I think people should just, understand that, do whatever you'd like to do with Columbus. But I think that people would benefit from an honest discussion about a lot of these things because, our kids are being fed a certain point of view and are not given any kind of other point of view. And so, it all becomes about a political thing. This is all political. This has nothing to do, it's to forward this political narrative. And our kids are being fed this, and instead of learning about history, they're really learning to be a part of a political movement. So, people can do whatever they want. I don't believe in trying to erase history. I don't believe in cancel culture. I believe the more voices, the better, and that we don't try to silence people by saying, if you don't vote to take down Christopher Columbus, you're a white supremacist. I mean, that is so outrageous and so radical. People just need to take a little perspective. So I think that there's room enough for lots of different points of views, and I think that the majority rules in Chelsea. So, and I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. I see Councilor Damali Vidal.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you kindly. So I will be absolutely supporting this measure to remove the Christopher Columbus statue from Chelsea Square. This whole idea that we're erasing history that wasn't accurately depicted of the true events that happened to my ancestors or the ancestors of the majority of the people that live here is just something beyond me. This idea that we're using systemic or institutionalized education that has often been focused on a Eurocentric view and we are not supposed to challenge it is absolutely beyond me. And so for me, I don't consider the removal of this statue something that makes me feel good. Still, our schools are underfunded. Still, there are people that are homeless. Still, there are people that don't have work, that don't have food. So still, the very same actions that are represented by this statue, by what that person, their values that they employed, have manifested and perpetuated in our community, hence why I do the work that I do. So the fact that somehow we're going to feel better because this is going to solve world hunger is just, it couldn't be further removed from the truth. And the last thing I want to say is that if you are an elected official or if you are a leader in a community with the needs that we have, and we hear of things like the Columbus statue or the rigidity in values that some elected officials hold, if you are not radicalized by that, then you're not paying attention. So yes, proud radical here, voting against the Christopher Columbus statue, because enough is enough in upholding white supremacy and the values that come along with it. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay, I have, anyone else wish to speak that hasn't spoken before? Great. Councilor, Councilor Giovanni Recupero. Your turn. Go ahead, you have the floor. He spoke on the communication.
The powers to be is going to get rid of the statue. That's what's going to happen. But that's okay. You can get rid of everything. It doesn't make a difference. You know why? Because you ain't going to change nothing. The only thing you're going to change is your views. It ain't going to change. You think things will change? That's because they want you to get rid of the statue. If that's the case, next thing we should put is to get rid of Thanksgiving. Why don't we get rid of that? That's a good thing. Get rid of Thanksgiving. Why not? So I'm going to put a petition to get rid of Thanksgiving. Don't recognize Thanksgiving. If you're going to do it, get rid of them all. Because otherwise, you're only picking and choosing. Like the former counselor says, it's all political. That all it has to do is that they're trying to feed you. You can never get rid of history. You can't get rid of what happened. It's the same thing as saying the Holocaust didn't exist or the Turks never killed the Armenians. That's the same thing as saying all this stuff. It never existed. But everything exists. You can't wipe it out. It exists. So why do you try to get rid of? That's fine. You want to get rid of it? I'm not against it. It doesn't matter. You want to get rid of it, get rid of it. The part that it's different to me, that makes me kind of think, is like, why do you want to wipe your history? It's not just, and I keep saying Columbus was Italian. Columbus wasn't Italian. Columbus, Italy didn't exist. That's a Latin holiday. Then you might as well wipe out every Hispanic last name you have. You don't exist. Because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't have Hispanic names. All the Hispanics in this country, change your names. Don't use them. Use your regular names before Columbus came here. Don't be proud of your Spanish heritage, because your Spanish heritage don't exist. Get rid of it. Change your last names, if that's what you want to do. I keep hearing Columbus was the time. Columbus did for the Spanish. He was Spanish. His name was Colon. That was his name. So you want to get rid of a statue, fine. I don't care. But tell the truth. The honest truth is, this person worked for Spain. So every Hispanic that's here has an Hispanic last name. Wipe your last name out. Rodriguez don't exist. When I go home, I'm going to tell my wife, hey, don't put your name Rodriguez. You're not a Rodriguez. It didn't exist. Your ancestors didn't exist. Get rid of your name. If that's what you think is politically correct, to get rid of your last name, get rid of it. Why keep it?
Thank you, Councilor.
Nothing's going to stop the statue from being gone.
Thank you, Councilor.
You're only erasing your own heritage.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else before we go to a roll call vote? Great. So we will move to a roll call vote. Clerk, if you can clarify the vote for councilors, please.
Yes would agree with the order to remove the statue, and no would be not to remove it.
Okay.
Councilor Vido?
Yes.
Councilor Avellaneda? Yes. Councilor Recupero? No. Councilor Garcia?
Yes.
Councilor Vega Maldonado?
Yes, absolutely.
Councilor Robinson? Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilor Taylor?
No.
Councilor Lopez?
Yes.
Councilor Brown?
Yes.
Councilor Zabit?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 absent.
Motion passes. We move on now to new business.
New business. First order under new business order introduced by Councilor Avellaneda, Councilor Zabit, Councilor Garcia, and Councilor Vega Maldonado. Resolution urging fair and full employment opportunities at Amazon. Whereas COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of the city of Chelsea, and whereas the preventative measures put in place to combat COVID-19 by state and local agencies to prevent the spread or curtail transmission of the coronavirus have had a devastating economic impact on local retail establishments and have changed the retail options for the residents in the city of Chelsea. And whereas existing retail and e-commerce delivery networks currently operate in the city of Chelsea and set community standards for every family with sustaining wages, benefits, including but not limited to quality health insurance and secure retirement. And whereas Chelsea's retail and e-commerce delivery options coexist in diverse neighborhoods while adding value to the fabric of the community, including offering good careers for Chelsea residents to provide for their families. And whereas existing e-commerce delivery options have aptly served the residents of the city of Chelsea throughout the COVID-19 pandemic while maintaining the highest of standards for its essential workforce. Whereas Amazon, which does not conform to the area standards for wages, benefits, and working conditions, has targeted the Chelsea area for expansion of its e-commerce. And now therefore be resolved that Chelsea City Council hereby assembled urges Amazon to meet and confer with the Chelsea community, including but not limited to the representatives of labor union, including the International Brotherhood of Teamsters Local 25, locally impacted neighborhood groups, local residents, and other interested parties to discuss how Amazon can expand delivery operations, warehouses, and fulfillment centers in a way that it's beneficial to the city of Chelsea and its residents while guaranteeing sustainable growth for the city and helping to ensure that fair and equitable employment standards are maintained for e-commerce delivery networks. And be it further resolved, prior to any expansion into the city of Chelsea, Amazon commits to and presents sufficient evidence to the Chelsea City Council that its operations meet or exceed current community standards established by existing e-commerce delivery networks. This commitment would include that all delivery drivers will be direct employees of Amazon and not independent contractors. Amazon must commit that all its delivery drivers will be competent, safe drivers, that Amazon, its delivery drivers, will maintain the utmost professional.
What is the wish of the council? Councilor Avellaneda?
Move to adopt on a roll call vote, if I may speak on it.
We have to move to a roll call vote in front of us, and Councilor, you may speak.
Thank you, Vice President Garcia. This resolution is one that would make sure that a message is sent to a large employer, now one of the largest employers in Massachusetts, that is Amazon. We understand that they have made attempts to, or inquiries about possible locations within our community to, have a fulfillment center. Right now, they've got 2 in Revere. They are moving, they have the border over here in Everett. And they're going to continue to grow and possibly at one point maybe come to Chelsea. That being said, let's make sure that Amazon understands, not when you're entering doing business in Massachusetts, that there are some certain values that we ask our employees to have. And I think it's very fair. This is not, I don't think that what I'm stating here is anti-business in any way or disruptive. It is basically this. Number one, these are things that we've already passed, and we ask our contractors, those that do business with our city, to do. And we do the same as employees. That is, offer a living wage. There's no argument that we understand that jobs, in order to be had here in Massachusetts, should offer a wage that doesn't make a person live in poverty. Okay, so that's number one, offer a living wage. Number two, that the procedures and their driving and the operations are safe. I don't think there's too much controversy there, asking that the working conditions, the vehicles and the practices and procedures are done safe. There are guidelines there. Nothing out of the ordinary. And lastly, I'm losing my train of thought there. But,
happens.
What was that?
It happens.
It happens. It's with the age, But again, that they're playing by our local rules here, and in doing so, that they are, stakeholders in our community, if they choose to be, that are share the values that this council, this city has, and that's simply what we're asking for. And there's nothing in there that's controversial that isn't already argued. So I think that it's a safe bet that my colleagues would support this if you read it, that's something that we will want a local employer to abide by, and that obviously an organization such as the Teamsters, who has had past experience in transportation, would want this. I remembered what the last point was, and that is that they don't use the term independent employee wrongly. Organizations and business practices, whether it be Uber and such, we're now finding that they're using, it's a misnomer. They have these employees as independent contractors, but they're not. The way Amazon has been using its employees, or rather independent contractors, 40 hours plus, it's a method that they are doing so that they won't have to, treat that person, that individual who's putting 40 plus hours a week, working 5 days a week for them, as an official employee, and have to take care of all the benefits that they would have to for a regular employee, such as health insurance, unemployment insurance, and everything else, because it costs more, of course. So by using the misnomer of independent contractor, they think they can get away with that and not use that. But we're asking, let's call it what it is. Walks like a duck, acts like a duck, quacks like a duck, you're a duck. You're an employee of Amazon, treat them respectfully, have them covered, and have the same benefits that would every other proper acting business in Massachusetts does. And that's what we're asking Amazon to do. So I hope my colleagues would support this and reading it, and that we send a message to Amazon if and when they come here, or whether or not they're in Revere and are employing Chelsea residents, because just because they're next door, not in Chelsea, doesn't mean that they may not be employing residents from Chelsea, that should they go and get employed at the Revere site or the Everett site, that they have good paying jobs that have the benefits and they deserved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Councilor Brown.
Chair, if I could just ask the maker of the resolution if he could add my name to that, because I did get it late and I did submit my name as a co-sponsor.
The request before us is to add Councilor Brown's name. It's to add your name to, it's to sign it, correct?
Yes.
The request before us is for Councilor Brown to sign on. You have the, is there anything else, Councilor Brown, you would like to say? No. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? I see Councilor Vidot.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I'd also like to be added onto the resolution, along with Councilor Brown. I think that I'm really glad that we're pushing this forward. We've saw what the pandemic has done to a lot of the mom and pop shops, and even to the malls, and Amazon has really soared with people needing to order things that come directly to their home. So, I mean, asking for people to get paid fair wages, and to have health insurance, and to not have the confinements of it being an independent contractor, I think is not too much to ask given what our Chelsea values are. So I just want to shout out the maker of this resolution and sign on as well. Thank you.
I see Councilor Todd Taylor. You have the floor, Councilor.
Thank you. I would also like to sign on to this. I'm not opposed to trade unions collectively bargaining and trying to make sure that people have fair treatment in their workplace. And I think that Amazon has shown time and time again that they are a powerful entity in this country. And I think it's one problem that I think is actually very serious, that big corporations are kind of uniting with the government. And again, if anybody knows anything about history, this is the basis of fascism, and a corporate unity with the government. And we really do need to kind of crack down on a lot of these big corporations. And so I find myself in agreement with many of you on this. And I think that having good jobs for our Chelsea residents is important. And I think that If there are union jobs, those people will absolutely get a better deal, and I'm for that.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Todd
Thank
Taylor.
you.
Thank you, and I also acknowledge Councilor Giovanni Recupero.
I'll be on it too. I think it's a good thing that I give people a sense of security to get jobs and to create a better life. Everybody wants a better life. And to create a better life, you need good paying jobs. If you don't have any good paying jobs, your life is not as great. So I'm in favor of that too.
Thank you, Councilor. Chairwoman recognizes Councilor Enio Lopez.
I'll be on that resolution.
Are you requesting your signature as well?
Please.
So far, I have the request of Giovanni Recupero, the request of Councilor Enio Lopez, the request of Damali Vidot, the request of Councilor Todd Taylor, and the request of Leo Robinson to be included in the resolution as official signatures. We will be submitting a new sheet for everyone to personally sign after. Chairwoman recognizes Councilor Avellaneda.
Just to make sure, I want to make note of of what has just happened and landmark. I don't want this to just go unnoticed. We finally got Todd Taylor to sign on to a resolution. I just want to make sure.
I would have called you out of order, but this was a nice one. That's great. Councilor Todd Taylor, I give you the floor.
Since President Avellaneda used my name, I believe I have the right to speak now.
Absolutely, you do have the right.
This resolution is not partisan. And so I still say that I will vote no on every partisan resolution that comes before this council because it's political window dressing. But I think this is different, and this is not a political partisan issue, and that is why I am voting for it.
Thank you, Councilor Todd Taylor. Anyone else wish to speak, or we move on to roll call? Great. Seeing no one, we move on to roll call. Clerk, if you can please clarify the vote.
A yes vote would be to agree with the contents of the order, and a no vote would be not to agree. Councilor Vido?
Yes.
Councilor Avellaneda?
Yes.
Councilor Recupero? Councilor Garcia?
Yes.
Councilor Vega Maldonado?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson? Councilor Rodriguez? Councilor Taylor? Councilor
Yes.
Lopez?
Yes.
Councilor Brown? And Councilor Zabit?
Yes.
11 in favor, none opposed, motion adopted.
Motion is adopted unanimously. Thank you. We have the next order.
Next order introduced by Councilor Robinson, requested the city manager to update the Chelsea City Council on the legal clinic program, the number of agreements resolved, and the number of court cases they have taken.
Objections?
Next order introduced by Councilor Recupero, requested the city manager to give an update on all grants that have been awarded, how the grants are allocated, and if any grant is combined with city monies, how will the council see that on the budget?
I'd like to adopt the suspension if there's no objection. I'd like to speak on it.
Councilor Recupero, you have the floor.
I don't know if most of us councilors, this city gets 100 grants. I don't know where all the grant money goes. The whole purpose of me trying to figure this out is our city, our poor residents pay high rent and high taxes. In order for us to lower the taxes, we have to lower our budget. If we don't lower our budget, our taxes will never go down. So I want all of us exactly to know where all this money is, and I don't think we can combine the grants with the budget. They're two separate things. And I was wondering if we could maybe figure out a way where some of these grants can offset some of the way we can help our residents, not just the homeowners, the residents. Because when the city has high taxes, your rents are high. So what happened is you can't live here anymore. So you want to help us all. And in order to help us all, we have to know exactly, maybe we have to cut. Maybe that's the only solution. I'm not in favor of cutting anything, but I'm in favor of survival. If we don't do something, people won't live in this city. And eventually, the city will die. That's how it works. That's how it is. You can't make it so high what the average individual cannot live there. So, I don't know where all these grants go. I would like to know where all these grants go. I know there's 100 of them. I know that. So, how are they being used? That's a simple question. And maybe if we can offset some of the money from this to help with the tax burden.
Pass on the suspension. Seeing no objection, we're moving on to the next one.
Introduced by Councilor Cooper, request the city manager to instruct DPW to make the streetlight pole numbers be legible to residents.
I'd like to adopt under suspension. If there's no objection, I'd like to speak on it.
Seeing no objection, you have the floor, Councilor.
A lot of people call 311 because the lights are out. But in order for them to fix the lights, you have to give them the pole number. And if you can't read the pole number, how are you going to do that? And 90% of the time, people look at the lights and they don't understand that you have to get, or they don't know that they have to get the number of the pole. And I want to make the numbers legible, not in little, they're really, really small. You have to get out, go to the pole, and see it. So if you make it legible, the people can see it, and they can call 311 and say to them, hey, this street light is out, but you have to have a number of a pole. So that's a good thing. It's to help our resident. Make it easier on them, or even make it easier on all of us when the lights are out to get the lights fixed.
Next order, introduced by Councilor Cooper, a request that the city manager to instruct DPW to fix a street light located on the corner between Maverick Street and Shirtliff Street.
Councilor Vido?
I'd like to adopt under suspension as an objection.
Wrong
I'd like
one.
to speak on it.
You have the floor. Sorry, I was one ahead.
It's not really the street light, it's the pole. For 4 years, 3 years, the pole has been hanging, and it's still there. I know the city cannot change the poles. That's a job for Eversource. I know DPW cannot do it either. But maybe if the city can push it, what are you waiting for, the pole to fall on somebody's head? And then you change it? Oh, I know the pole costs $60,000 to replace. But what's important? Someone's getting their head crushed or fixing a pole. So shouldn't we turn around and fix the pole, or make Eversource at least straighten out and fix the pole? It's been 3 years. I put this order before, 3-4 years ago, and it's still, the pole is there, and it's still doing the same thing. So how do we remedy this situation? I would like to know. I know the city, I'm going back to the same thing. The city cannot fix it. It's Eversource. But maybe the city can force Eversource. There seems to be issues with the city can't fix, the city can't do, it's all Eversource. So let's make Eversource fix it. Thank you.
Next order.
Next order, introduced by Councilor Vido, ordered for the city manager, ask the IT department and CCTV to research the possibility of airing live city council meetings directly from CCTV or the city website.
Councilor Vido?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I'd like to adopt this unanimously under suspension if there are no objections, and I'd like to briefly speak on it, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. So prior to 2016, city council meetings were something that you would only be able to see if you had Comcast and you were able to go on Channel 3 or Channel 22. But folks who have Verizon were unable to be able to access a lot of city programming. And so thankfully, we all banded together and we were able to get it on social media, and now people are able to see this live on Facebook. But there are folks that may not have a Facebook account. And so I just want to make sure that, you know, that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that we're reaching more folks. It's been so hard during the pandemic. I know for me, and I'm in the know because I have access to information as a city councilor, but I know it's difficult for me to kind of stay abreast of everything that's happening in the community. And so I saw that there are communities where if you go onto the city website, it automatically has like a plugin where you could see the meetings live on the city website. And I would love for our CCTV or the RT department to look into making that possible, just so we can reach more folks with what's happening at City Hall.
Councilor Robinson?
Move this to a conference and have the IT people come and be part of the conversation?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson asked that we have a conference on the subject matter and that we invite IT to discuss this.
Sure.
Okay. Next order introduced by Council Vido, ordered for the city manager to instruct the IT department and CCTV to expeditiously resolve accessibility to public speaking portion of the city council meetings.
Councilor Vido?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to, actually, maybe, I was going to adopt unanimously, but maybe we should also send this to a subcommittee on conference. And I'd like to speak on it briefly, if I may.
You may.
Thank you. So basically, I know that there was a letter that a teacher sent over with respect to the Columbus statue. And she was told that she wouldn't be able to participate in the public speaking portion of the matter. And, you know, in light of the pandemic, and I just think that we should really do everything in our power to make sure that we're prioritizing the public speaking portion of the meeting. It's really one of the few times that we get to hear from the public, and I almost, to me, it's more important for me to hear from the public than it is for me to hear ourselves speak to each other. So I just want to make sure that we're prioritizing this, and whatever issues exist, or whatever kinks there are, that we work through them to make sure that we're prioritizing this very important part of our public meetings.
Okay. Next order introduced by Council Vido, ordered for a subcommittee on conference be held to discuss transitioning to full remote city council meetings to prevent digital and communication disparities.
I'd like to also send this to a subcommittee on conference, and I'd like to speak on it, if I may.
Councilor Vido, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we've been doing this partial hybrid city council meeting thing for a while, but there have been a bunch of issues that we've had, and if we think it's hard for us to kind of stay on the same page, it's even worse when you're looking at us from the outside, when you're looking at city council meetings that are recorded. And I think that the problem is that we're not all operating from an equitable playing field. Some folks are there in person, they don't have a computer, while others are maybe at home and have a computer. And so it just makes it so that the level of the way that we're interacting with one another is just not, it's not cohesive, and it shows from the outside looking in. So whether it's that we go full remote, or that everyone has access to a computer in front of them so we can see all faces. When there is a person speaking in public, I cannot see from this capacity. I cannot see the city council president. I cannot see anything. I'm just looking out into a blank screen, and I am talking and hoping that people are hearing me. That's why every time I'm asked to speak, I'm like, can you hear me? Can you see me? It creates disparities, and I think it's only fair for us to try to tighten up our ship a little bit more so that folks at home, to make this easier for people to interpret at home. So I would love for us to welcome the conversation and see if there's a way that we could do this so that we can level the field a little bit more to make it easier for the outside world to see where we are and what's happening with city business. Thank you.
Read the next, we'll read the next order. An order introduced by Councilor Robinson.
Ordered that in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 64, Budget Management Procedures, whereby costs incurred by the city in FY20 were not paid and are owed to the vendor, and to meet this obligation, funds are required from the current year FY21 city manager budget and HR department budget respectively. That the city council authorize the following expenditure to satisfy the unpaid balance from the prior year as follows. City manager executive department, $1,100, constant contact. HR department, $69.65, Keach's Law Group.
Move to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections.
Councilor Robinson asked that this financial order be sent to a second reading.
And the last order introduced by Councilor Robinson, ordered that in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 64, Budget Management Procedures, whereby costs incurred in FY20 were not paid, not owed to the vendor, and to meet this obligation, funds are required for the current year FY21 school department budget. The council authorizes the following expenditure from the school department expenditure line to satisfy the unpaid balance from the prior year as follows. Hef Jones LLC, $1,705. Johnson's, $452, and ASNE of New England, $1,134.
Move to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections.
Council Robinson asked that this financial order be sent to a second reading. Seeing no objection.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
That concludes the items on the agenda. At this time, I'll ask if any of my colleagues have any announcements that they'd like to make. Council Robinson.
I would like to make an announcement that I was able to get my vaccine shot last Thursday, and I encourage everybody in our community to think hard about going out and taking a shot. I'll be getting my second shot on March 12th, but I encourage everybody to go out and figure out if you should be taking a shot or not. But I would highly encourage you to take the shot so we can get ahead of this thing before the year gets out.
Anyone else? To the public, we do know that there are several locations here in Chelsea that you can get your vaccinations, besides MGH and then also Beth Israel. But the Chelsea Collaborative, in collaboration with East Boston Clinic, has been getting a lot of news, of course, that they've now offering shots, vaccinations for anyone who's interested. Right now, the age is 65 and above. The telephone number, if you're interested, is 617-568-4780. Again, 617-568-4780 to make an appointment with East Boston Health Clinic, who's operating in the office space by the Chelsea Collaborative. Are there any moments of silence? Councilor Robinson.
A moment of silence for Chelsea's own Chick Corea, and in honor of Black History Month. Last year she passed away, but and that is Katherine Johnson. And she was actually, when NASA used electronic computers for the first time to calculate John Glenn's orbit around the Earth, a Fisher called on Johnson to verify the computer's numbers. Glenn had asked for her specifically and had refused to fly unless Johnson verified the calculations.
Thank you, everyone.